Have you ever felt like you are working hard, earning a steady income, but still can't get out of a precarious financial situation? You may be one of the millions of people facing this problem without even knowing it. David's story, a hard worker who still needs money. Let's take the story of David, a 35-year-old man from London, UK, as an example. David is a civil engineer who works 50 hours a week and has a stable income. He lives in a small apartment, commutes to work by car, and spends money on essentials. However, at the end of each month, David always feels worried when he looks at his bank account because the balance is only enough to pay basic bills, leaving it with no room to save or invest in the future. David thought that if he just worked hard, saved a little, and didn't borrow much, he would be able to take care of himself. However, he made a common mistake that many people don't realize. He was financially blind. Despite working tirelessly, David didn't understand how to manage his money effectively. He didn't have a clear financial plan, didn't track his spending, didn't invest, and didn't know how to create passive income. Financial literacy deficit. David is not alone in this situation. In modern society, many people work hard, but don't understand how money works. They think that having a stable income, saving, and not having debt is enough. But in reality, a lack of financial literacy can keep you stuck in a vicious cycle, never achieving financial freedom. A recent survey in the UK found that more than 60% of Britons don't have a clear personal financial plan. They don't know where their spending is going. They don't know what an asset or a liability, and they don't have a reserve fund or investment plan for the future. Because of their lack of financial literacy, many of us continue to live in a false sense of security until an incident occurs, and they are no longer able to face financial difficulties. The consequences of lack of personal financial literacy. David's story and millions of others are a testament to a painful reality. Financial blindness doesn't kill you immediately, but silently takes away your freedom, self-esteem, and potential every day. Just one small mistake in spending, not having a savings plan, or not investing properly, will put you in a precarious financial situation without knowing why. Every wrong financial decision will gradually make you lose opportunities in life and not be able to go far. Therefore, understanding and managing personal finances intelligently is essential to building a sustainable financial life. In order to avoid falling into a state of financial blindness, you need to have a clear strategy for your cash flow, from earning, spending, saving to investing. We will learn more about how to manage personal finances and how to avoid the mistakes that financially blind people often make. What is financial blindness? Financial blindness is not a problem of lack of money, but of not understanding how money works in your life. It is when you do not know how to manage, allocate, and optimize your cash flow, making it impossible for you to accumulate, invest, or create passive income even though you have a stable income. When you do not have a clear financial strategy, your cash flow can leak without you realizing it. This can lead to you always feeling deprived, even though your income may be enough to cover your living expenses. Financial blindness is a lack of application of basic principles of personal finance in daily life. Signs of financial blindness. To recognize whether you are financially blind or not, we need to pay attention to the following signs. Uncontrolled spending. You spend money without a clear plan. Do not track monthly spending. You just buy what you feel you need at that time without analyzing whether it is really necessary or not. This leads to the money in your pocket disappearing without a clear reason. Borrowing without a plan. You borrow for temporary shortages without a specific repayment strategy. You borrow to live, borrow to shop, without realizing that not planning to repay the debt can cause you to fall into a vicious cycle of debt. This is a clear sign of financial ignorance. Not investing. One of the clearest signs of financial literacy is not knowing how or not daring to invest. You may have money, but because of fear of risk or not understanding the forms of investment, you choose to keep the money in a bank account without letting the money work for you. This can cause you to miss out on opportunities to get rich and grow your finances. Financial illiteracy reduces personal financial capability. Even if you have a stable income, if you do not have a clear financial strategy, you can still fall into a precarious financial situation. Financial blindness prevents you from saving for the future, from making profitable investments, and from growing your assets. Take the example of John, a 35-year-old man living in Manchester, England. John is a software engineer with a stable salary of about £40,000 per year. Although John's income is enough for him to live comfortably, after many years of working, he found that he had nothing to save, and the amount he saved barely increased. After each month, John only found that his bank account balance was still just enough to cover monthly expenses, with no savings for the future. John has never learned how to invest, nor does he have a clear financial plan. He also never thought about building an emergency fund or creating passive income. Although John had a good job and a stable income, he still couldn't escape the financial vicious circle. Things never seemed to change, and he always felt worried about the future. This proves that even if you have a good income, if you don't understand how to manage and optimize your money, you can still be stuck in a precarious financial situation. Financial blindness not only prevents you from accumulating money, but also makes you miss out on opportunities to increase your assets and protect your personal finances. Common types of financial blindness. Spending blindness. Spending blindness is when you don't have a clear plan for spending, leading to easy spending due to emotions, lack of control, and lack of financial strategy. This is the most common and dangerous type of financial blindness because uncontrolled spending can quickly empty your wallet, even when your income seems stable. Many people suffer from this type of blindness without realizing that they are spending money on unnecessary things or on temporary emotions, not understanding that those expenses will seriously affect their finances in the future. Example of Lily, primary school teacher in Manchester. Lily, a 34-year-old primary school teacher living in Manchester, is a typical example of someone who is financially blind when it comes to spending. She has a stable job, with a salary of around £2,200 per month and no major debts. However, even though her income seemed to be enough to cover her living expenses, Lily always felt like she had nothing left over at the end of the month. Lily was not a big spender, but she often spent money on small things without a clear plan, such as going to the store when she saw a sale or go out to eat when she felt tired. She also spent money on weekend trips, and although each trip was not very expensive, in total, these expenses consumed a large portion of Lily's monthly income. Lily's biggest problem was that she did not keep a record or track her expenses. She did not have a clear budget and never analyzed her spending. Whenever her credit card was paid, she never paid attention to how much she had spent that month, but simply let it go without thinking about it. This makes her not realize that these small expenses actually consume a large portion of her income, and if she doesn't change this habit, Lily will have a hard time saving for long-term goals like buying a house or retiring. Analysis of Lily's problems. Emotional spending. Lily spends money based on her emotions, without a clear strategy for spending money. She often spends money on unnecessary things when she feels stressed or wants to reward herself. This is a habit that many of us have, because spending gives us a temporary sense of satisfaction, but it makes us lose control of our finances. Lack of spending plan. Lily doesn't have a clear budget, doesn't know how much she is spending on different goals in life. This leads to her not being able to allocate her finances properly, and in the end, despite having a stable income, she still can't save anything. Not tracking spending. Not keeping a record or tracking her spending prevented Lily from realizing that small expenses had a big impact on her finances. When you don't track your finances, you won't know how much you're spending on unnecessary items, and as a result, you'll always feel like you never have enough money. How to avoid financial blindness about spending. Create a budget. One of the first steps in taking control of your personal finances is creating a budget. Budgeting helps you determine how much money you'll spend on specific goals each month, such as food, transportation, entertainment, and savings. You can start by writing down all your expenses, from the smallest to the largest, so you know exactly where your money goes. Controlling emotional spending. To avoid uncontrolled spending, you need to learn to control your emotions. Instead of shopping when you feel tired or stressed, find other ways to relax, such as exercising or listening to music. You can also limit surfing the web or going online shopping, which can easily stimulate you to spend money. Set aside money for long-term goals. Create a financial plan for the future. Set aside a portion of your income for savings or investment instead of spending on unnecessary things. This will help you have financial peace of mind in the future. Conclusion. Being blind to spending is not a small thing. It directly affects your financial ability and stability in life. Like Lily, many of us spend emotionally without a clear financial strategy. However, simply changing your spending habits, creating a budget, and tracking your expenses will help you improve your financial situation and build a more solid financial future. Blind to inflation. When savings are forgotten and inflation destroys their value. Inflation is one of those important financial concepts that many people don't really understand, leading them to save money in their accounts without realizing that the real value of that money is being eroded over time. No matter how much you save, if you don't know how to protect the value of your money from inflation, your money will gradually lose its purchasing power. This is one of the common types of financial blindness that few people realize until they have to face the real consequences. Jack Story, a London taxi driver. Let's follow the story of Jack, a 50-year-old taxi driver living in London. Jack has been a taxi driver for 25 years and earns around £2,500 a month, a stable income compared to many people in this city. Over the years, Jack has been saving his earnings and depositing them into a bank savings account, hoping that this money will help him have a reserve fund for future. However, after many years of saving, Jack began to realize that his savings were no longer enough to meet his basic living needs as before. Although Jack was not a spendthrift, he had always been careful with his finances and never borrowed money. He was proud of his monthly savings and felt secure when he saw the growing amount of money in his bank account. However, when Jack planned to buy a new car and calculated his ability to pay, he realized that the savings he had accumulated over the years were no longer enough to cover his purchases as before. Problem analysis. Inflation and the purchasing power of money. Although Jack has been saving every month, he has not realized that inflation, the increase in the general level of prices in the economy, is eroding the value of the money he has saved. The £10,000 Jack saved for the past 5 years can no longer buy the same things it could buy in the past. If the price of goods and services increases by 3 to 5% each year, the purchasing power of that money will decrease significantly over time. Lack of investment. Putting money in a savings account with a low interest rate is a way to protect money from depreciation, but it does not protect money from inflation. Jack does not invest in investments that can help his wealth grow, such as stocks, bonds, or property. If Jack had invested some of his savings in these, his wealth could have been protected and increased in value over time. Long-term financial planning. A big part of Jack's problem was that he didn't have a long-term financial plan and didn't understand inflation protection strategies. He simply thought that saving was the only way to protect his finances. However, saving without investing can cause you to miss out on growing your wealth and protecting the value of your money in the long run. Jack's solution, and you too, invest in appreciating assets. To protect your money from inflation, you need to invest in growth assets such as stocks, bonds, mutual funds, or real estate. These types of assets not only help you maintain the value of your money, but also provide passive income from dividends, interest, or rent. Use value-preserving financial instruments. One way to protect your money from inflation is to invest in value-preserving financial instruments such as gold, foreign currencies, or value-preserving investment funds. These tools can help you protect your assets during times of economic uncertainty or high inflation. Stay informed about your personal finances. To avoid inflation blindness, you need to regularly learn and stay informed about financial principles, such as how money flows, how to protect your assets, and investment strategies. Understanding inflation and financial tools will help you make smarter decisions about managing your money. Conclusion. Inflation blindness is not an obvious mistake, but it can slowly and silently get you into financial trouble. Like Jack, many of us don't realize that simply saving money without investing it can cause our assets to lose value over time. However, by investing in productive assets and adopting smart financial strategies, you can protect and grow the value of your money and build a solid financial future. Debt blindness. Not distinguishing good debt and bad debt. Falling into a debt spiral. Debt is not always a bad thing. It can be a useful financial tool if used properly. However, when you cannot distinguish between good debt and bad debt, or borrow without a clear strategy, you are very likely to fall into a debt spiral and eventually a personal financial crisis. This is one of the most common types of financial blindness, and once you do not understand the nature of debt, you will be controlled by it instead of controlling it. Dan Story, a British man falling into a debt spiral. Let's follow the story of Dan, a 30-year-old office worker living in Manchester, UK. Dan is a very hard-working person and has a stable job at an IT company. He earned around £2,500 a month, enough to live comfortably, but he didn't really save much. In particular, he fell into a debt spiral that he couldn't get out of. 1. The first step, overspending in consumer debt. About a year ago, Dan decided to buy a new car worth £15,000. Although he knew he didn't have enough money to pay for it all at once, Dan decided to take out a bank loan to pay for it. He thought it was the only way to get a nice, convenient car for work. The monthly payments were a small amount compared to his income, but he didn't realize that borrowing money to spend, especially on non-essential needs, was a bad idea. Not long after, Dan took out another loan from a finance company to buy electronics and a new phone, saying he wanted to buy better stuff. He still made regular monthly payments, but he didn't realize that the debt was gradually accumulating and causing him to lose control of his finances. 2. Loss of control, borrowing to pay off debt. At the end of the year, Dan's company went through a round of layoffs. He wasn't the one who lost his job, but his income decreased because the company didn't have many new projects. Meanwhile, his consumer loans still had to be paid regularly. Dan began to worry, and instead of controlling his finances, he started borrowing from different sources to maintain his daily life. This situation lasted for several months, and Dan felt like he was being crushed under the burden of debt. He borrowed money from his credit cards, borrowed from friends, and even took out a loan from another financial company to pay off old loans. But instead of reducing his financial burden, Dan was caught in a spiral of debt that was difficult to escape. 3. Lessons from Dan's story. The difference between good debt and bad debt. Good debt is debt that you take out to invest in productive assets that will generate cash flow and increase your wealth in the future. For example, you can borrow to invest in real estate, stocks, or start a business with the potential to generate income. These loans help you create new assets, and the money will come back to help you pay off the debt. Bad debt, on the other hand, is debt that you take out to consume or invest in non-productive assets that do not generate income. This type of borrowing leads to a long-term financial burden, preventing you from accumulating or investing in things that bring long-term value. In Dan's case, borrowing money to buy a car and electronics is a typical example of bad debt. These loans do not create value or income, but only prolong his debt cycle. 4. How to get out of the debt cycle. Learn how to manage debt. If Dan had known the difference between good debt and bad debt from the beginning, he could have avoided a lot of financial mistakes. Borrowing is not a bad thing, but it needs to be used wisely. To get out of the debt cycle, Dan needs to create a debt repayment plan. Dan needs to create a clear debt repayment plan. Started with the debts with the highest interest rates and gradually paying off unnecessary consumer loans. Don't borrow to spend. Instead of borrowing to buy things, Dan needs to stop and review his spending. He needs to save and avoid buying things he doesn't really need. Invest wisely. To create passive income, Dan needs to learn about investment opportunities and learn how to use his money to earn interest instead of just keeping it in the bank. Build an emergency fund. Dan needs to start building an emergency fund to avoid having to borrow money in an emergency. 5. Conclusion. Invest in your personal finances the right way. Dan's story is a clear example of not distinguishing between good debt and bad debt, and the consequences that financial ignorance can cause. To avoid this situation, you need to learn how to manage debt. Only borrow when absolutely necessary and when you have a clear plan to pay it back. Invest in your personal finances and create a strong financial system to avoid falling into a debt spiral and let your money work for you. Investment blindness, fear of losing money, and the difference between investing and gambling. Investing is one of the most effective ways to grow your wealth and achieve financial freedom. However, many people, especially those who are not well-versed in finance, are often afraid to invest because they are afraid of losing money. They do not know the difference between smart investing and gambling, and that is the reason why they miss out on opportunity to grow their wealth throughout their lives. Tom's story, losing faith in investing. Let's follow the story of Tom, a 32-year-old accountant in London. Tom has a stable job with an annual income of about £35,000. He is a very hard-working person and always tries to save every month to prepare for the future. However, he always feels insecure about money, and that is why he started looking for ways to invest in the financial market. 1. Getting started. A brief look at investing and the fear of losing money. One day, while surfing the internet, Tom saw an advertisement for a cryptocurrency exchange that could make huge profits in a short period of time. The advertisement promised that investing in cryptocurrencies would help investors earn huge profits in just a few weeks. Although Tom did not understand the financial markets, he saw this as an opportunity to change his financial life. Tom began to listen to the attractive advertisements and started investing in cryptocurrencies without doing much research. He decided to spend 2,000 pounds of his savings on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Tom thought this was the fastest way to get rich without having to understand the market. 2. Loss of control, investing or gambling. At first, Tom felt very excited because the value of cryptocurrencies began to increase rapidly. Within a few days, he had made a pretty big profit. That feeling of victory made him even more confident in his investment decision. However, things started to change when the value of cryptocurrencies suddenly dropped sharply. Within a few days, the value of Tom's investment evaporated by more than half. Tom started to panic and tried to cut his losses, but then the value increased slightly. He started to feel that investing in cryptocurrencies was a game of chance, and he did not know whether he could get back the money he lost. This is a clear sign of financial blindness, when one cannot distinguish between real investment and gambling. Tom did not understand that the cryptocurrency market is a risky market, not a smart investment method. 3. The difference between investing and gambling. To better understand Tom's story, we need to distinguish between investing and gambling. Investing is when you put your money into an asset that has the potential to generate long-term profits. Smart investing is not about looking for opportunities to make quick profits, but building a long-term strategy based on careful research and analysis. Smart investments can include real estate, stocks, bonds, or mutual funds. Gambling, on the other hand, is when you bet on short-term opportunities without a clear understanding of the risks and rewards. Gambling is when you invest in opportunities that are unclear, without a strategy, and without understanding how the market works. This is a situation Tom is facing with the cryptocurrency market, where he bets on virtual currencies without knowing how it works. 4. Consequences of not understanding investment. Tom learned a hard lesson about investing and gambling. After losing a large amount of money and feeling disappointed, he realized that investing is not a game of chance. To invest successfully, you need to understand the fundamentals of finance, have a clear strategy, and accept risks in a controlled manner. Tom started reading books, taking courses on personal finance and investing. He learned how to analyze investment opportunities and identify investments that fit his long-term financial goals. After a while, Tom started investing in mutual funds and real estate, which he understood better and had a solid foundation. 5. Question for you. Are you really investing or just gambling? Tom's story is a classic example of financial blindness when you don't understand investing. However, it is also an important lesson about the need to understand the market and distinguish between smart investing and gambling. You may be facing big investment decisions, but ask yourself, am I really investing or just gambling? To avoid falling into financial blindness like Tom, you need to learn how to research the market, understand the risks, and build a long-term investment strategy. Investing is a journey, not a short-term race. Start with small steps, learn from mistakes, and always have a clear plan. Conclusion: investing requires knowledge and strategy. If you want to achieve financial success, you need to understand investing and build a reasonable investment strategy. Don't let quick money opportunities trick you into gambling with your finances. Start learning, build a personal financial plan, and make your money work for you instead of you working for money all your life. Financial system blindness, when there is no long-term plan and goals. One of the reasons why many people are in precarious financial situation and have difficulty escaping the vicious cycle of poverty is the lack of a clear financial system. Working hard every day without a clear plan will never help you achieve financial freedom. You can earn a lot of money, but without a solid financial system, you will never be in control of your finances. Tom's story. from working hard to building a successful business system. The story of Tom, a restaurant owner in Manchester, is a clear example of financial system blindness. Tom started his restaurant when he was very young, hoping to have a stable job and be able to make money sustainably. However, like many others, Tom never thought about building a solid financial system for his business. 1. The days of managing a restaurant alone. Tom opened a restaurant in 2015 with a small truck and a simple menu. Although he was a good cook, he did everything himself. He went to the market to buy ingredients, cooked, served customers, cleaned, and even did the books. Tom's work was a long series of tasks from morning to night, and he always felt tired. Although Tom's restaurant always had customers, his revenue was unstable. One day, the restaurant was very crowded, but the following days it was quite quiet. Tom had no system to track customers, manage costs, or allocate work properly. He just worked tirelessly without stopping to reevaluate how the restaurant operated. 2. Conflict and burnout. Although Tom's work was stable, he began to feel exhausted. He had no time for himself or his family, and his restaurant always had organizational problems. Every day, customers came to eat, but he still had to do everything himself without any support. Gradually, Tom realized that even though his job was stable, he still could not develop his restaurant. He had no time to think about how to expand the restaurant or improve the service. Even on days when there were no customers, Tom had to struggle to maintain the job by himself. 3. The transformation step. Learning how to build a system. One day, Tom met an old friend named Chris, who used to work in the restaurant chain management industry. Chris taught Tom an important lesson. If he wanted his restaurant to grow, he had to apply a clear system to manage the work. Chris explained that not only restaurants, but any business needed a solid financial system. This includes allocating work, building financial management systems, tracking revenue and expenses, and especially knowing how to use technology to optimize work. 4. Applying systems and success. Tom decided to apply what he learned from Chris. He began to reorganize his work, hiring more staff to share the cooking and serving tasks. Tom also started using software to manage the restaurant's revenue, expenses, and financial situation. He clearly divided the work for each person and started planning marketing strategies to attract new customers. After a short time, Tom's restaurant became more stable. He no longer worked hard alone, but could delegate work to his staff while still maintaining the quality of service. The restaurant's revenue began to stabilize and even increased as he began to expand the menu and offer new services. Tom also began to realize that with a solid financial system, he could not only maintain the restaurant but also expand a business, such as opening a new branch or investing in other business models. 5. Lessons for you. The importance of personal financial systems. Tom's story is a clear demonstration of how not having a solid financial system will keep you busy and unable to move forward. Financial systems are not only applied to business, but also an important factor in each person's personal life. A financial system helps you have a clear spending plan, know how to manage your income, and create passive income. A financial system helps you not be blinded in spending, investing, or borrowing. When you have a clear plan, you'll no longer have to struggle to find ways to live day by day without a long-term goal. A financial system also helps you invest in the right opportunities instead of focusing on emotional spending or uncertain investment decisions. Conclusion: if you want to build a stable and free financial future, the first step is to build a clear financial system. Start with simple things like allocating income, spending reasonably, and investing wisely. Only with a system can you develop sustainably and escape the precarious financial situation like Tom before. Learn from successful people and apply the system to your life to create a solid financial future. Asset and liability blindness, a costly misunderstanding. One of the most common financial mistakes people make is not distinguishing between assets and liabilities. They spend money on things they think will bring them long-term value, but in reality, they are just taking money out of their pockets without generating any return. This blindness to the truth leads them to fall into a debt spiral, unable to create sustainable financial stability. An asset is something that earns you income or increases in value over time, while liability is something that takes money away without creating any value. Not understanding the difference can lead you to invest in things that don't generate any return and miss out on opportunities to grow real assets. Steve and Emma, investing wrong. Steve and Emma, a couple living in Bristol, are a prime example of this type of financial blindness. Steve is a software engineer, and Emma is a primary school teacher. Although they have a stable income, their finances are always in trouble. The main reason is that they do not understand how to manage assets and liabilities. 1. Spending on things that do not generate income. Steve and Emma both have stable jobs, but they often spend money on things that they think are assets. They bought a new car worth £30,000 with the aim of having better transportation. However, this car is nothing more than a liability. It does not generate any income but only costs money for maintenance, fuel, and insurance. The couple also spent a large amount of money on upgrading their home. They bought expensive furniture and renovated a house in the hope of creating a better living space. However, this did not create any cash flow, but only increased the burden of monthly expenses. They don't realize that buying furniture and renovating their home could be a good decision if the asset is profitable or increases in value. But in this case, it's all just personal spending without a long-term investment plan. 2. Lack of investment understanding. In addition to spending on things that don't generate income, Steve and Emma also don't think about investing in assets that can generate income. They don't buy stocks, don't invest in real estate, and don't even take the time to learn about other investment channels like mutual funds or investing in business projects. Instead, they keep their money in their bank accounts, thinking that it's a safe way to keep it. However, Steve and Emma don't know that with the current bank interest rates, they can't beat inflation, meaning that the value of their money will decrease over time, even though their account balances remain the same. This makes them increasingly poor, despite having a stable income. 3. Realizing mistake. After a few years, Steve and Emma realized that they could no longer continue living in this precarious financial situation. They began to learn about personal finance and realized that their spending on cars and home improvements were bad decisions. They decided to sell their expensive car and upgrade to an older, cheaper car that still met their transportation needs. The money they saved from reducing their car expenses allowed them to start investing in real estate. Steve began to research investing in stocks, and Emma learned about mutual funds. Gradually, they learned to distinguish between assets and liabilities, and realized that if they did not invest in productive assets, they would not be able to build financial stability in the future. A lesson for everyone. Steve and Emma's story is a great lesson for those who do not distinguish between assets and liabilities. Many people think that buying a new car, renovating their home, or spending on non-essentials is a way to improve their quality of life. But in reality, they are investing in things that do not generate returns. Understanding the difference between assets and liabilities is the first step to building a strong personal financial system. If you want to achieve financial freedom, you need to understand that assets are things that can generate income or increase in value over time, while liabilities only consume money without providing value. Start by investing in assets, saving a portion of your income to create an effective and sustainable financial system. Conclusion: people like Steve and Emma are not incompetent, but they are ignorant about personal finance. They have learned to distinguish between assets and liabilities, and from there build a clear financial plan. Investing in assets that have long-term value and generate income is the only way to break the cycle of poverty and achieve financial freedom. Learn to manage your money wisely, invest in the right places, and don't let emotional spending override important financial decisions. 4. Personal finance system and how to get out of financial blindness. What is a personal finance system? A personal finance system is more than just saving a portion of your income or spending wisely. It is a systematic way to manage all the cash flows in your life. It includes earning, spending, borrowing, keeping, giving, and investing, all done intelligently and strategically to create lasting financial freedom. While many people think of personal finance as simply managing money, in reality, it is like running a business, except that business is your life. An effective personal finance system can help you achieve financial freedom, break the cycle of debt, and build lasting wealth. The financial puzzle. To build a complete personal finance system, you need to understand and fully apply the following basic pieces: earn, spend, borrow, keep, give, and invest. Each piece plays an important role. If one of these elements is missing, your entire financial system can fall into a state of imbalance and can lead to poor financial decisions. 1. Earning money. Earning money is the first important element in the personal finance system. However, not all methods of earning money are effective. To have a sustainable income stream, you need to learn how to earn money intelligently and develop skills that can generate passive income. For example, the story of John, a civil engineer in London, is a typical example. John started his career as a construction worker, but then he realized that in order to have a stable income, he had to find a smarter way to make money. John learned how to build small real estate projects and started investing in buying and selling houses in developing areas. By applying his new skills and creating systems, John not only had a stable income, but also started to accumulate assets. 2. Spending money. Spending money without a plan will lead to poor financial decisions. You must know how to allocate your income to specific goals, from saving, investing to spending on living expenses. Spending money must have a clear purpose and need to be carefully monitored. For example, Sarah, a marketing manager in Manchester, used to overspend on luxury items without knowing that she was overspending. She spent too much money on clothes and unnecessary items, causing her account to be in deficit. After learning about personal finance management, Sarah started to plan her spending, allocating budgets for necessities, such as housing, health, and education, while cutting down on unnecessary expenses. This helped Sarah save a large amount of money every month. 3. Borrowing money. Borrowing money can be a useful financial tool if used correctly. However, many people use borrowing for consumption or without a clear repayment plan, leading to uncontrolled debt. For example, David, a cafe owner in Bristol, borrowed money to expand his shop but did not have a clear repayment plan. After a while, he felt the pressure of debt and decided to borrow more to pay off previous loans. This caused him to fall into a debt spiral. However, after friends showed him how to borrow money to invest in profitable assets, David learned how to borrow wisely to build new shops, creating a passive income stream. 4. Keeping money. Keeping money is not simply saving, but protecting assets and building reserves for the future. A savings account or emergency fund can help you weather financial storms without having to borrow money. For example, Emma, an accountant in Birmingham, built up an emergency fund after she started tracking her monthly expenses and putting a portion of her income into a savings account. One day, she had an emergency when her car broke down, but thanks to her emergency fund, Emma didn't have to borrow money or disrupt her financial plan. 5. Give money. Giving is not only about helping others, but it's also a way to build trust and create long-term relationships. Giving properly can lead to more opportunities in the future. For example, Oliver, an investor in London, started giving a portion of his income to charities. After a few years, he realized that giving gave him more networking opportunities and expanded his network. This gives him new investment opportunities, while also bringing prosperity to himself. 6. Investing. Investing is an important factor in creating financial freedom. Investing is not just about buying real estate or stocks, but about using your money to create long-term value, ensuring passive income in the future. For example, James, an entrepreneur in Manchester, realized that working hard and saving alone is not enough to create long-term wealth. He started investing in the stock market and investment funds, as well as building a real estate portfolio. Thanks to these investments, James can live comfortably without worrying about finances. Conclusion: the personal financial system is a clockwork machine in which each piece plays an important role. You need to understand how to manage and operate these pieces to be able to master your personal finances and create sustainable financial freedom. Learn, apply, and create a clear personal finance system to secure your financial future. Steps to getting over financial blindness. Understanding cash flow and spending. One of the first steps to getting over financial blindness is understanding your cash flow and how you spend it. Most of us earn money, but no one teaches us how to manage that money. As a result, money just flows out of nowhere, and we end up in financial poverty. For example, Daniel, a banker in London, once encountered this situation. Although his income was quite good every month, when he looked at his bank account, he felt no idea where the money went. Daniel decided to start tracking his spending and made a detailed spending plan. He divided the money into specific goals, such as savings, investments, living expenses, and entertainment. After a few months, he realized that having a clear spending plan helped him save a significant amount of money each month and reduce his feelings of financial anxiety. Understanding inflation and how to protect your money. Inflation is an important factor that few people pay attention to, but it has a huge impact on the value of money. The money in your savings account may be gradually losing value without you even realizing it. To avoid the situation, you need to know how to protect your money from inflation. For example, Richard, a construction worker in Birmingham, saved for many years in his bank account without realizing that the amount he accumulated was not increasing enough to keep up with inflation. After realizing this, Richard decided to move his money into safe investments, such as government bonds and real estate investment funds. Over time, these investments have helped Richard's money grow, protecting its value from inflation. Only borrow when you have a clear strategy. Borrowing can be a useful financial tool when used correctly. However, many people borrow money without a clear strategy, leading to borrowing to consume instead of using borrowing as a tool to create assets. For example, Sam, a car mechanic in Manchester, borrowed money to open a motorbike repair shop. However, at first Sam did not have a clear plan and did not calculate his ability to repay the loan, which led to him having difficulty paying off the debt. After learning about smart borrowing and creating a detailed financial plan, Sam decided to borrow another small amount of money from the bank at a low interest rate to expand his shop. This time, he only borrowed with a clear strategy and used the loan to invest in new car repair equipment, which increased the shop's revenue. Sam's story is a lesson in using borrowing to create assets, not liabilities. Smart investing. Investing is an indispensable factor in building long-term assets. However, not everyone understands investing correctly. Investing is not about putting money in one place and hoping that it will make a profit without understanding the market and investment opportunities. For example, Olivia, a businesswoman in London, started participating in the stock market after she learned how to invest from experienced people. Instead of choosing high-risk investments without knowing anything about it, Olivia decided to invest in stocks of reputable companies with growth potential. After a while, she found that these investments not only helped protect her assets from inflation, but also generated passive income, which helped her reinvest and increase the value of her assets. Building a personal financial system. Building a personal financial system is an important step to help you control your cash flow and invest strategically. This financial system includes not only earning money, but also having a reasonable spending plan, a smart borrowing strategy, and a safe investment method. For example, John, a financial consultant in Edinburgh, built his personal financial system very early. He divided his income into many categories, including saving, spending, borrowing, and investing. John also used a part of his income to invest in long-term investment funds and real estate, helping him have passive income from these sources. In particular, he also paid special attention to building an emergency fund to deal with unexpected situations in life. This financial system has helped John live comfortably and not have to worry about financial problems in the future. Distinguishing assets and liabilities. One of the common mistakes many people make is not distinguishing between assets and liabilities. Assets are things that generate income or increase in value, while liabilities are things that reduce your wealth without creating any value. For example, David, a business owner in Manchester, used to spend money on luxury items such as expensive cars and watches without understanding that they were liabilities. After learning about personal finance, David realized that instead of spending money on expensive items that did not bring value, he should invest in assets such as rental properties and stocks that have the potential to generate income. David's story is a lesson in how to distinguish between assets and liabilities, and how to use money to invest in things that can generate long-term profits. Conclusion. Understanding and applying the basic principles of personal finance will help you have a stable and sustainable financial life. By understanding cash flow, spending wisely, investing wisely, and building a personal financial system, you'll be able to achieve financial freedom, protect your assets, and grow your net worth. The importance of understanding the financial game. In a world where money and finance play a pivotal role, in every aspect of life, it is extremely important to understand how money works. Especially when you do not understand a financial game, you will easily become prey for those who understand how the financial system works. You can earn money, you can work hard, but if you do not know how to control and master your personal finances, you'll always feel like you're going in circles without achieving your long-term financial goals. You don't need to be a financial expert, but you need to understand the basics. For example, Michael, an office worker in Manchester, has always worked hard and has a stable income, but he still feels like he cannot escape the situation of living from paycheck to paycheck. Every month, although he saves a sum of money, it is soon spent on daily expenses. Michael had no debt, but he still felt like money was slipping through his fingers. One day, Michael met an old friend, John, who had been through the same thing. John explained that he didn't need to be a financial expert to control his cash flow, but he needed to understand the basics, such as how to differentiate between assets and liabilities, how to invest money profitably, and how to manage his expenses wisely. John also shared that he started learning how to save money, investing in productive assets like stocks and real estate, instead of just putting money in the bank without a clear plan. As a result, John got out of the paycheck-to-paycheck situation and started building a stable fortune. Michael and John's story is a perfect example of how understanding the rules of the financial game doesn't necessarily mean being a financial expert, but just mastering the basics to manage money effectively. Basic principles you need to understand. Saving requires a goal. Saving is necessary, but simply putting money in a savings account is not enough. You need to have a clear plan for your financial goals, such as buying a house, investing in education, or building a retirement fund. You also need to clearly distinguish between saving for urgent needs and saving for long-term investment. Spend with a plan. Don't let your spending be emotional. Plan your spending. Allocate your budget to different goals, such as living expenses, investing, saving, and entertainment. Spending with a plan helps you control your cash flow and avoid unnecessary expenses. Invest smartly. Investing is a tool to help you increase your assets effectively. However, you need to understand clearly about the types of investments, from stocks, real estate, to investment funds. Don't rush into investments without understanding them. Instead, do your research and find investment opportunities that fit your financial capabilities and goals. Distinguishing assets from liabilities. One of the important principles is to clearly distinguish between assets and liabilities. Assets are things that have long-term value, generate income, or increase in value over time, such as rental real estate or dividend-producing stocks. Liabilities, on the other hand, are things that decrease in value over time and do not generate income, such as an expensive car or luxury items. Why understanding the financial game is necessary. As in Michael's story, his lack of financial knowledge made him feel like he was always racing against time without being able to achieve his financial goals. Working hard every day does not mean you'll become rich if you do not know how to operate money wisely. Personal finance is not a game of chance, but a system with clear rules. People who understand the principles of finance will not only generate income, but also know how to protect assets, invest profitably, and build a stable financial future. For example, Anna, an executive at a large company in London, has been studying finance since she was a student. She understood that working hard alone is not enough to create financial freedom. Anna started investing in profitable assets, such as stocks and real estate. She also knew how to use financial instruments to protect assets from depreciation due to inflation. Thanks to her understanding of finance, Anna has built a stable asset and has a passive income. Conclusion: finance is not a difficult subject for experts. Anyone can learn and apply the basic principles to manage their money wisely. Understanding the rules of the financial game will help you have a stable financial life, avoid unnecessary risks, and create opportunities to achieve financial freedom. Start with the basic principles such as saving, spending wisely, investing wisely, and clearly distinguishing between assets and liabilities to have a sustainable financial future. Encourage action, mastering personal finances to create financial freedom. Personal finance is an indispensable part of modern life. However, not everyone understands how to manage finances wisely. Most of us make mistakes due to lack of financial knowledge, and as a result, money always seems to slip through our fingers even though our jobs are stable. But this can change, and you can completely master your finances. Why do you need to learn about personal finance? Financial blindness is a fairly common condition, especially among people who live by their emotions and lack knowledge about how money works. When you do not understand personal finance, you'll easily fall into the trap of emotional consumption, waste, or do not know how to invest in assets with long-term value. Financially illiterate people often do not have a clear strategy on how to earn, spend, borrow, or invest, leading to money just passing by without bringing any value. Imagine the story of David, a 35-year-old accountant living in London. David has a stable job with a monthly income of around £3,000. However, despite his decent income, David always feels like he cannot save anything after paying his monthly expenses. He never knows where he spends his money, and every time he needs money for unexpected expenses, he has to borrow from friends. Despite working hard, David still does not feel he has financial freedom. He does not know that, even though he earns money regularly, if he does not understand how to manage his cash flow and make a financial plan, he will never have the financial stability he desires. Start learning personal finance to master your financial future. Starting to learn personal finance is not too difficult, but it requires perseverance and determination. Personal finance is not a specialized subject reserved for experts, but the basic knowledge that anyone needs to know to manage money effectively. Understand cash flow. The first and most important thing is that you need to understand your cash flow. This means you must know exactly how much money you earn and where it goes each month. David started by recording all his monthly expenses. After 3 months, he realized that he was spending too much on unnecessary items, such as meals out, new clothes, and technology items. After analyzing, he began to reduce unnecessary expenses and plan his spending more reasonably. Save and invest. Saving is a first step to building a solid financial foundation. But simply saving is not enough. You need to learn how to invest so that your money can make a profit. One of the simple and effective ways to invest is to put money into investment funds, stocks, or real estate. David started to learn about investment funds, and after careful research, he decided to invest part of his money in stocks. Although he was a bit worried about the risk at first, with careful research, David has had significant profits, helping him increase his passive income without having to work too much. Create a contingency fund. An emergency fund is indispensable in a personal financial system. Without a contingency fund, you'll easily fall into financial difficulties when encountering events such as illness, accidents, or unemployment. David started building an emergency fund with at least 3 months of his living expenses. This helps him feel more secure when facing unexpected situations in life. Benefits of mastering personal finances. When you learn and practice personal finance management, you will find that it is not only about financial stability, but also about freedom. When you have a solid financial system, you will not have to worry about money, not be afraid of unexpected expenses, and most importantly, you will have the freedom to do the things you love without worrying about your financial future. David now not only feels financially free, but can also enjoy life without living in worry. He can travel without worrying about money. He can also invest in new opportunities without fear of losing money. By applying the principles of personal finance, David has built a stable and financially free life. Conclusion: personal finance is the key to financial freedom. As David's story shows, understanding and applying personal finance principles helps you build a solid foundation, which in turn creates financial freedom. From understanding cash flow, saving, investing, to building an emergency fund, all of these factors play an important role in helping you master your finances. So, are you ready to master your personal finances and create financial freedom for yourself? Don't wait until you're in trouble to start learning about finance. Start today to build a stable and free financial future.